very good evening. You're watching India Today on social media. I'm Nabila Jamal, giving you a roundup of the day's news. So before I get on with the whole Agnipath protest, the Bharat Bandh that was called for by some of the splinter groups on social media, I'm going to first address a really tragic story that's coming from Maharashtra's Sangli, when 9 members of a family died in that one house. At least the police say that they're not going to rule out a case of suicide. So from what we understand here, initial reports suggest that all 9 members of that one family, parents, children, grandchildren, aunt, uncle, all of them have died by suicide. They've consumed something poisonous and they've all succumbed at once. And the police initially, as soon as they barged into the house, this was about 350 kilometers away from Mumbai in a district called Sangli, where 3 bodies were found in one spot of the house and the 6 other bodies were found lying around different parts of the house. So it's so painful to even imagine what the family was going through. But again, not trying to cast any aspersions here, but from what we hear and as per police sources, this could be a case of extreme poverty, where the family had no money to feed their family, no money to feed themselves, and owing to dire poverty and hunger that they've claimed their lives. There could be a lot many more reasons. There could be layers to this case, which we don't know as yet. But from what we understand firsthand, as per initial sources, they tell us that this was a case of extreme poverty and the family couldn't handle it, and they, instead of holding out their hands, asking someone to help them, they decided fit to kill themselves. So, these stories really leave us shell-shocked when the entire country today is fighting over the Agnipath scheme or several other issues, communal issues that are just, being reported by the day, and issues that could be really truly avoided. Here, these issues like this, poverty, hunger, is something that really desperately needs to be addressed, but somehow the attention and our priorities is not towards that direction. And that's why I wanted to start with this story that's really left us all shell-shocked to know that 9 members of the family decided that they wanted to claim their lives at once. If this is a case of suicide, really, it's really shocking to know that people are suffering internally, so much so that they do not want to take help. They decide that killing themselves is possibly the fit way to deal with their problem. Well, the police is trying to still understand what more may have happened, but this is certainly shocking. It could have been a suicide pact among all the family members, is what the police say. So very startling details emerging from that case, but we're really prayers going out to the extended family members who hopefully who are there, who are still existing and alive, are trying to cope with this kind of loss. Really, all prayers and heart going to them. Now, a quick word on the Agnipath scheme. We saw large-scale protests today as well. Today was the Bharat Bandh, where many splinter groups on social media said we're going to observe a Bharat Bandh. Did not get the kind of response that they wanted. Of course, Bihar is one of the states which is burning. Literally, we're seeing arson, vandalism, spread on a large scale by these army aspirants who are very insecure about their career and their future in the army. So today was a Bharat Bandh that they called for, and no political party really formally jumped into this, or rather announced for a Bharat Bandh. But today, when the Bharat Bandh was anyway declared on social media, it seems like the Congress took an opportunity, dived into this protest, and they also, the Youth Congress carried out rail roko protest in Delhi. They have stopped a train. They carried out some protests in spurts across the capital city of Delhi as well, blocked traffic near Connaught Place, etc. So a little bit of shosha and the optics surely that the Congress did on a day when Rahul Gandhi was also being grilled by the Enforcement Directorate. So somehow we see that the lines are blurred. Was the Congress really protesting for Rahul Gandhi being grilled by the Enforcement Directorate, or was the Congress protesting for in support of the army aspirants who were protesting against the Agnipath scheme? So there's a little bit of a confusion there, where the Congress itself seemed to have been divided on their purpose of protest today, but nonetheless they took a good opportunity for to dive into this Bharat Bandh and protest vehemently, condemning the BJP overall on fascist government, all these allegations which we have heard enough and more anyway from the Congress on BJP being a fascist government, on BJP imposing their thoughts on the Sangh Parivar involving themselves, on the RSS attempting to raise a cadre through this Agnipath scheme. This is the kind of narrative that the opposition has unleashed. But yeah, let me take you through some of those fears. The opposition parties, now the JDS, for example, H.D. Kumaraswamy from Karnataka has said that this is an attempt to erect Nazis. He says that RSS is involved directly in recruiting through this Agnipath scheme, and this is the RSS or the Sangh Parivar's initiative to erect a whole army which is true to the BJP and the RSS. And also Mamata Banerjee, West Bengal Chief Minister, spoke on the same lines. Mallikarjun Kharge, who's a tall, very seasoned Congress leader or a very tall neta as such, a politician of repute, he himself said that this is an attempt by the RSS to raise up a cadre, to in fact strengthen their cadre through this Agnipath scheme. So, while opposition leaders say something like this, it also, of course, casts aspersions on the Indian army and its intention and its credibility and its merit, etc. So, we really hope, at least in the future, that the opposition leaders think before they say, make statements of this kind, because this is really adding fuel to the fire. We are already looking at burning protests in the country, and instead of calming the situation, maybe have a logical, sensible dialogue between the people of the ruling party, the BJP, who's come out with this scheme, the Agnipath scheme, and the opposition leaders who are sensible enough to have a sit-down conversation, try and understand the pros and cons of this scheme, and then possibly, see if that they could percolate that information to the large groups of agitators, so that this doesn't pan out the way it is, because it's the common man who has absolutely nothing to do with the Agnipath scheme at this point, or Rahul Gandhi's grilling for that matter, who bears the brunt of traffic snarls, of roads being blocked, of buses being vandalized, of public transport being halted, of railways. 500 trains today was cancelled because of this whole agitation and this vandalism over the last 5 days, mostly in railway stations. So would we ever see India progress to a point where we see the opposition and the government sitting in a logical, in a round table, having a logical dialogue and discussion to try and quell dissent instead of fanning it? Now, of course, many would ask questions about why did the government not consult with the stakeholders before rolling out with the scheme. Of course, for the government to answer this, the government, of course, has to respond to these allegations as well. But indulging in arson, violence so bad is certainly no answer. Speaking of the government, whether they're going to roll back this scheme, they very clearly, curtly said that's not happening. Agnipath scheme will not be rolled back. Now, to in fact strengthen what they've done, in fact, the government has already decided. In fact, the Indian Army, after the IAF, the Indian Air Force, had first announced that they're rolling out recruitments from July onwards. Now, even the Army has issued a statement today that their registrations will begin from July. So this is a notification that the Army has already sent out, saying that they are going to be recruiting under the new Agnipath scheme starting from July. Sometime in July is when it will begin. So so this, which means very clearly that none of the tri-services are perturbed by this entire agitation that's currently unfolding. They call this misleading information that's being fed to many of these army aspirants, which is why they're protesting and acting out. But according to the military today and the government of India, this is a progressive move. In fact, many of them, many stalwarts, eloquent, thought, or thinkers rather, thought leaders have already voiced their opinion in favor of the Agnipath scheme, calling it progressive. Like, for example, Kiran Mazumdar, who otherwise is very critical of the government, but this time says that this Agnipath scheme seems to be a progressive move by the government. But the pros and cons you can see on our websites, on our channel. We've been playing out to you what the government is saying in clarification to this Agnipath scheme, but it doesn't seem like obviously the army aspirants still very vulnerable and feel that they are chances within the army are scuttled, and their now future in the army is insecure. Like they have absolutely no job security, to which the government has responded in measure. All the three army chiefs have spoken to us on India Today, so do catch their interviews to see what they have to say. But now the army is going ahead with recruitments under this new scheme, but also those who are going to be joining the Agnipath scheme recruited under this process will also have to take a pact of not revealing any secrets that is told to them. In fact, they will be barred from disclosing any classified information gained during the 4-year period. Any unauthorized person or source, to anyone who you reveal this information to, you will be booked under the Official Secrets Act of 1923. So this is just a piece of information, FYI, that I'm giving. And also, apart from that, the army has also extended the age limit from 21 years to 23 years. So now up till 23 years, if you're anything between 17 and a half to 23, you are eligible for this Agnipath scheme. But again, this extension of age is only for this cycle of 2022. So this was again done because of all the protests that we saw unfolding. So that's that. A quick word on Sidhu Moosewala's murder. We know now that a gangster who gunned Sidhu Moosewala down, one of the shooters, has been arrested. Haryana's gangster, Priyavrat Fauji, that's what's his name. He was caught on CCTV camera at Fatehabad petrol pump. 4 to 5 hand grenades were also recovered from the 2 accused. He has been one of that shooter, one of them among the 3 turned out to be the shooter who gunned down Sidhu Moosewala. So he's now been arrested, now raising a lot of course, questions on what really happened that fateful day. How did these men get those rifles and those ammunitions to carry out this gruesome murder? All that and more is what the police is still interrogating. It's now been weeks, but we still don't have the exact layout of how Sidhu Moosewala was murdered, or rather who exactly did it. Even though the police say it was Lawrence Bishnoi, Bishnoi himself has said he hasn't done it. He says that yes, we had a plan of killing Sidhu Moosewala, but we have not killed him. That's what Bishnoi says. Obviously, he won't admit to the crime, but will the police really trace back on what the reality was? We're really hoping, keeping our fingers crossed on that. All right, that's that. What mostly happened today was protests over Agnipath. ED grilling on Rahul Gandhi. 4th day of grilling of Rahul Gandhi, and of course we saw that today also, like I said, protesters are protesting against the Agnipath scheme or Rahul Gandhi's grilling the Congress party members. We are still a little unsure, but anyway, this is the 4th day of grilling in the National Herald case by the Enforcement Directorate. A quick word on Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a 2-day visit to Karnataka in Bengaluru. He's currently there to launch a slew of developmental projects. He's inaugurating 150 technology hubs. He's there. He's going to be visiting a couple of mutts, Suttur Mutt, and also the Chamundeshwari temple. He's going to be in Mysuru to attend one of the Yoga Day celebrations. So he's got a list of activities in his itinerary. While that said, you have many of the pro-Kannada activists in Karnataka who booed Prime Minister Modi's visit, because many of the boards that welcomed the Prime Minister had Hindi signages, the signages itself had Hindi written on it that welcomed Prime Minister. So many of the pro-Kannada activists put black paint and ink on those signages because they oppose to Hindi imposition and oppose to Hindi language being used anywhere. So apart from Hindi, there was also Kannada and there was also English, but they've blackened the Hindi language signages there particularly. And also schools were shut, schools were closed in Karnataka because of Prime Minister's visit. So this is also the Congress raising up as to what high-handedness is this? Because the Prime Minister is coming to our state, why should schools be shut? Why should classes be called off? Well, a quick word on 11 people who are currently stuck in a cable car in Himachal. In fact, it's very tragic because they still have no help. In fact, India Today was tracking those developments. We're looking at least 9 people, out of which 5 are women, 4 are men so far, who are rescued. 2 are still stranded. All right, total of 9 people have been finally rescued, 2 are still stranded. So they are receiving help, but at this point these cable cars are so uncertain. You just never know when it could snap or when there could be a technical glitch. So be careful when you actually board on one, because there are a couple of instances in the recent past that show that cable cars have malfunctioned, and unfortunately none of the resorts who actually operate it are take any responsibility. Neither do actual authorities or the local authorities there react quickly if there's an eventuality or an error. So yeah, please be careful when you actually get on one cable car anywhere in the country, because it doesn't seem like the safety measures are adequate. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.